interesting. Muy bien. Y tengo mi día de los miautos, sí, tengo mi camiseta de en anticipación, sí. We're coming up fall season here. Muy bien, y bienvenidos y bienvenidas. Espero que ustedes estén bien. I hope you guys are all well. Tonight is going to be a little bit of this, little bit of that. We'll have some short things here and there. I hope we fit in everything I planned. If we don't, I will strategically kind of reposition some things. I want to start with a couple of kind of reminder things. We have that video actually 2 weeks back on 10 cosas que no sabes del español, things that you don't, 10 things you don't know about Spanish. And I had some of those little helpful phrases like por fin and, you know, all those kind of things. But there are a couple of topics that were of interest that we are going to take a quick look at, but not a super long look at. Two of the topics that he brought up in the other half were this thing of using ser for location, where you think, wait a minute, isn't estar for location? What the heck is that about? So I'm just going to point out what that was about in that video from a couple weeks back. We teach you the wonderful little thing of for how you feel or where you are, always use a verb estar. And, you know, because you can memorize all these reasons. You know, and actually, if you're going to be a serious student, you do have to. But, you know, context is king always, and tells you whether you use ser or whether you use estar. And because we have this little phrase to help you decide in a pinch, quickie, for how you feel or where you are, always use the verb estar. And you know, well, location, I use estar to tell where things are. Well, that's right about 90% of the time. So what's the other 10%? Because there's always an exception to a rule. The other 10% is when we're talking about events that take place in a specific area. Then we actually do use ser, oddly enough, to talk about location. It's really the only time we use ser to talk about location. So when you're talking about, the way he explained it in the video was objetos, objects. Yeah. When you talk about where objects are located in space, right? You use estar, you know, mi celular. Mi estar está aquí en la mano. Está aquí en la mano. It's here in my hand. Es un objeto. It's an object. Bueno, sí. Y el libro aquí. El libro está en la mesa. The book is on the table. For most things, we talk about location. When we talk about an object or a human being or an animal, we use estar. But when we talk about an event, in point of fact, we do not use estar. So, por ejemplo, la boda es en la iglesia. The key is, it's very, very simple. If you're talking about an event, boda, la boda, wedding. A wedding is not an object. Here's your easy key. Yeah. A wedding is an event. It's a happening. If it happens, if it's not, si no es objeto, if it's not an object, si es un evento, if it is something that happens, then we use es. La boda es en la iglesia. La reunión, the meeting. A meeting is not an object, es un evento. La reunión es en el salón principal. It's in the main big conference room, big salon, see? So curiously, oddly, if you're talking about an event, something that happens, and you tell where it happens, even though you think it should be a stat, it won't be, because that's not an object. Oh, there you go. There's a reason. Okay, so that's pretty easy to figure out, you know? Okay, vale, so ser estar. And that's on the screen is just a little review of ser and estar. These are little things. If people really insist, I got to know all the reasons, right? These are little mnemonic devices that give you reasons and rules. It's best for you as a speaker and a listener if you can get away from some of those reasons and rules, because usually when you are listening or when you are speaking, you got about that much time to, am I right, to figure out what the heck is going on here. Because somebody throws you a curveball, and somebody will always throw you a curveball. So, you know, you want to try to have like some kind of 50-50 rules. Etc. Ooh, it's either this or that, and have a quick way to decide. But, you know, with ser and estar, of course, position and location are always under estar. But if we have an event, it actually will be in this ser thing. And the little mnemonic device we have for ser estar is always doctor and then place. Some people call it Dr. Elf, emotions, locations, and feelings, emotions, locations, and feelings, which is an easier thing to decide on. And position and location are really the same thing. They are. Action, they're just talking about, you know, we use estar with, estamos hablando ahora, estamos hablando de ser y estar, y cuál es el verbo correcto que tenemos que usar. So estar with something that's happening right now, it must be happening while you're speaking, to use estar with that ing, ando, yendo, right? Conditions are changeable. Emotions are changeable. So, you know, what you want to do is maybe get away from some of those rules and go to the easy thing of for how you feel or where you are, always use the verb estar. If it isn't that, it's ser.
Is it valid?
That's a 50-50. How you feel or where you are. Use estar. Oh, it's not that. It must be ser. I must use ser. So just keep that in mind. That was one handy thing he talked about, because most people don't really think super hard about this topic of using ser for events. It is kind of an oddball rule. But there was another thing he talks about, which is actually pretty common, and that was words that end words. No, that's too vague. Nouns, sustantivos, nouns, naming words for people, places, things. Nouns that end in ah sounds, but they're not feminine. So these are very oddball set of words, but you'll start to see some things that will click. Actually, you know, we always have these rules about, oh, you know, you can tell if a noun is masculine because it ends in o. You can tell if a noun is feminine because it ends in ah. But then we've got exceptions to the rules and this and that. And, you know, again, you want to get to know a lot of this stuff according to just how you hear it used. But oops, sometimes it is not quite that easy. There are, oddly enough, a whole lot of words in Spanish that end in a whole lot of nouns that end in a, but oddly enough, they are not feminine, they are masculine. So we're going to take a look at some of these, because some of them wind up being words that you actually might use a lot, like problema. Muy común, una palabra muy común es problema. And you never want to say, you know, you hear people, because Americans have you know, no problemo, which is just really bad. You know, nadie dice no problemo. La frase no existe en español, but it's el problema. El problema, el dilema, el tema. The theme, the subject. Oh, sí, el tema del programa. The theme of the show, the subject of the show. El programa, muy común. Un programa de la tele, un programa en la radio, un programa, problema, dogma, you're not going to use that much. Sistema, quizás, maybe, sistema. Idioma, one of the words for language. There, you know, there's lengua, la lengua, but then there's el idioma, el drama, el fantasma, ghost, el coma, el aroma, el lema. A lema is a slogan. So this thing, see, Dia de los Muertos, that es una lema. It's a phrase. It's a saying. Es una lema, a slogan. A slogan on a t-shirt is el lema. El poema, el clima. You know, those kind of words. Wow, you wind up hearing people use those a lot. And notice a lot of those end in MA. A lot, not all, you know, la mama ends in MA, and that's certainly la mama. But a lot of these words, and they wind up being words that are kind of abstract in nature. A lot of these MA ending words wind up being from Greek, and they're masculine. Yay. So this little page is actually kind of helpful with that, you know. And we also have things that, you know, words that are end in ista. Ista goes both ways, feminine and masculine, depending on the sex of the person. But ista is always ista. It's never isto. So you can't say hard to say this, el artisto, you can't say because that doesn't make sense to people. El artista, even though it's a man, even though you use el, it's artista. It will never be isto, you know, and that corresponds to our ist in English, in Inglés. It's a rough correlation, you know. So anyway, this is kind of a helpful page. I'll probably send you a link to this because you know, this has got some MA words that are masculine. Oh, and then it's got a bunch of MA words that are not. And, you know, if you think about the big picture with the MA words that just talk about regular actual objects wind up being feminine. Look at these things. La crema, it's an everyday thing, isn't it? La goma, you know, like on the end of your pencil to erase, or goma, you know, what your tires are made out of. La llama, a flame. Okay, there's an odd one, you know, strategy. But pluma, paloma, la norma, la gema, la rama, a branch off of a tree, la rama, la palma. Those are kind of more everyday words. And then you look at these MA things and they're very conceptual. They're very, if you will, big picture kind of vocabulary words, you know. They're much more abstract, you know, sistema, problema, dilema, idioma, clima. So those wind up being the ones that came from Greek originally. So they're Latin. So you will have a lot of words in Spanish, a lot of nouns in Spanish that end in MAA. And if it's one of those Greek root things, it'll be masculine, masculino. Bien, ¿vale? Okay.
Marilyn, ¿puedo pedir una pregunta?
Dime, por favor.
La palabra policía.
Policía.
¿Es femenina o masculina?
Los dos. Los dos. Okay, policía es interesante. Policía is a little more interesting. I will. El policía, and there are certain words. No es importante saber de memoria, pero con la palabra policía quizás es importante. El policía, a policeman, guy walking the beat, little cap, billy club, if he has it, I don't know, taser, you know, guardia civil, one of those kind of guys. El policía, a policeman. If it's a lady, you would say la policía, but la policía in general, unless it's a feminine, a female police officer, la policía is still a valid word, and la policía refers to the whole police force. The whole police force. So it means a collection of people who wear those uniforms and enforce the local laws.
Okay.
That's the difference. But if you're just talking about a cop who's a guy, it'll be el policía. Bien?
Bueno, gracias.
Es buena pregunta. There are always some, and there are some more of those that really aren't important for you in a conversation group, but once in a while you come up with these little questions here and there. Entiendo. Okay. A ver, so we've got all of those. Oh, the last thing I'm going to bring up with this is that we do have some other little odd exceptions to the rule. And again, I'll send you the link to this because we're not going to spend a lot of time. There are some feminine things that end in O also. And I'll just send you the link to this. Again, there aren't that many. The one that is kind of common would be la foto. La foto, la mano, la moto. Yeah, wow, la porno, I hope not. La radio. But there aren't that many on this list that you're going to use in conversation. Okay, but la foto, la mano is just a straight exception to the rule. La foto, la moto, those are just shortenings of a long word, and that's why they stay feminine. Because instead of saying motocicleta, they say la moto, because motocicleta is feminine. And same thing with la fotografía, ends in an a. It's a feminine word, but when we do a shorty, stand-in word, a shortened word to stand for it, it becomes la foto because it really is a feminine thing. That's the only reason why. So, there are always odd things here and there, but since he referred to that in the video, I thought it would be worth it. Vale la pena. It's worth it to take a look at a couple things like that. Okay, bien.
Sí.
Bien, bien. Fantástico. Hoy, quiero practicar, quiero hablar de la idea de podemos usar dos verbos para expresar to remember. Y vamos a practicar y vamos a hablar de remembering, ¿sí? De la acción de remember. Y cómo se expresa. Y ¿por qué tenemos dos palabras? Y ¿por qué? No sé por qué. I do not know why we have two words. It probably goes back to just the fact that, almost all languages have what we call synonyms, and synonyms are simply words that mean the same thing or very close to the same thing. Okay. So we've got these two. We're going to do a quick walkthrough in case anybody has questions on it. I had sent off a couple of videos for you to watch on it. One very long and story oriented, and one with our two Mexican guys who were giving short examples. Tenemos en español acordarse and recordar. And so the important thing is in most cases, in the vast majority of cases, these are straight synonyms. They mean the same thing. And you can, in most cases, use them interchangeably. Okay? But where people get messed up is that the structure, the word order you must use for acordarse de is somewhat more complicated. You must have this many words to use that verb, and you really need to use them together most of the time. Here, okay, usually, so that means you've got to have a little me, te, nos, or se. You've got to have a reflexive pronoun with acordarse. You've got to have the verb itself. Oh, it's a stem changer. It's a UE. That's not too hard, right? And then you really should have that little word de. Here's when you can skip the de, when you just say, oh, I remember. Somebody asks you, have you got your room number? I remember, Acuerdo. Then you can drop a de, right? But when you name the thing you remember, you need that word de to introduce the thing or the person that you remember. So Acordarse is the same thing. It can be used in the same situations most of the time as recordar. Recordar is usually what people introduce you to in a Spanish class first because it's easy. I don't need a pronoun and a verb and the word de. I just use recordar. So that's usually what you're introduced to first in a class setting because it's a simpler structure. But the nice thing is what they have in common is that they are both UE stem changers. They both have a UE stem change, right? So, unless it's the nosotros or the vosotros form, we use the UE. So they'll look like this, yeah? Recuerdo, recuerdas, recuerda, but recordamos, we go back to the O from the original recordar. Recordáis, yeah, vosotros, we don't use in this hemisphere, recuerdan. So it's a UE stem change, yeah? But remember, we use UE stem changes for present and we use them for commands. So if somebody tells you, hey, remember that, like, don't forget it. They'll give you a command, and the command, because they're based on yo, drop the O, flip the vowel to the wrong vowel, you'll get a command like, recuerda, recuerda, por favor, or recuerde if you're giving a polite, a super polite, en usted command, or recuerden, even a plural command, okay? So we use it for commands. We use it to talk about what you remember. But remember, if we put recordar into the past, a UE stem change won't happen with an AR verb. So you keep the O from recordar. So recordé, I remembered. Recordaste, you remembered. Recordó, recordaron. And in imperfecto, I used to remember. Recordaba, again, we don't do a stem change. Stem changes happen in presente, in mandatos and commands. We use the stem change, and most stem changes don't happen in the past. There are a few, but not this one. Okay, so we got recordar, acordarse de. We always need to use these words in sequence. So you're taught in Spanish class, you're first introduced to remember with recordar because it's easier to use. And acordarse de is harder to use because now I need 3 words. But you know what? Sadly, a whole lot of people really like using this verb. Like it a lot, like it a lot. I think you hear it way more than the other verb. Es mi opinión. Para mí, es muy común usar acordarse de. Okay, so me acuerdo de, te acuerdas de, se acuerda de, nos acordamos de. We'll skip the vosotros because we're not using it in this hemisphere. Se acuerdan de, yay, it's got a stem change too, just like recordar, right? And so for pretérito, just like recordar, I don't need the UE anymore. But I do need the me, and I do need that little de, right? I do need the te, the verb, and the de. Okay, so the main difference is in structure. How many words you need to piece together? ¿Entiende? Understand?
Yeah.
Sí, Juanita, dime.
So I when I was watching Juan, and I like that guy. I love how he mumbles around to himself, and and I like his little Spanish accent.
It's his device, yes.
Yes. But yeah, and I understand his point. He repeats and repeats, and I thought he was saying me recuerdo, but maybe he wasn't, because what would that say? I remind me of me. See,
I know what you're thinking of, and what you are thinking of is that we also use recordar to talk about reminding. That is the one thing where it's going to diverge and split off a little bit. Okay, so we'll come back to that. very, very shortly, okay? So this little slide tells you all the little pieces. It needs 2 little pieces. It needs 2 pieces besides the verb, okay? So I'll send this to you guys again in case you lost it or forgot or whatever. You need that little pronoun. Usually we drop the yo, tu, el, but this kind of pronoun we can't drop. Acordarse is a reflexive verb, and you cannot drop the me, te, nos, and se. And the reason you really can't is that there is a verb, acordar, without the se, but its meaning is different, and it no longer means remember. So if you're going to use acordarse, which I'm going to tell you, Spanish speakers love that verb a lot. They love it, love it, love it. They love to use it. You need to remember, me acuerdo de, te acuerdas de, se acuerda de. You really must use those pieces together. Without the me, te, se, nos, without those little bitty pronouns, you totally are saying something different. Because acordar by itself, without that se reflexive piece, changes in meaning. It's just what happens.
What does it mean?
Here is the quick way to remember it. If 2 people make an accord, it means they are in agreement. Yes, that's what that verb is about. It's about being in agreement. Okay. And that's why, and even in destinos, there are 2 distinct references with that. Okay. You will hear people saying de acuerdo. De acuerdo. Wait a minute. De acuerdo. And it doesn't mean, well, it does in a way mean I agree. It means okay. It does mean you agree with somebody, but it doesn't mean you remember anything at all. Okay. Ooh, did I put that in my slides? I've got to see. Okay. I didn't. So I'm going to type it in here while we're looking at this. Well, yeah. Well, this sort of new little thing. It is very common to hear people saying, just by its lonesome self, this kind of phrase, de acuerdo. And there won't be anything else connected to it. Oh, de acuerdo. Okay, so somebody walks up to you. Nos reunimos a la una. Nos reunimos a la una. We're getting together at 1. Ah, de acuerdo. De acuerdo. They're telling you, A-okay. Because it's just de acuerdo, of accord. I agree. That's what you're saying. De acuerdo is like saying, okay, I agree. I acknowledge that. Whatever. Whatever it was. So de acuerdo is on its own just acknowledging assent or agreement. Okay. Formally, somebody can put a verb in front of it. Estoy de acuerdo. I am of accord with you. We got an agreement. I agree. Estoy de acuerdo is I agree. And that is the long form of the shorter de acuerdo. Most people conversationally will shorten it to de acuerdo. And they'll drop the estoy because it's understood. Just like you might say, okay, rather than I'm okay with that. Okay. Same thing, same idea. Different words to say that. So acuerdo by itself is a thing, but it doesn't mean remember. It means it's signaling agreement. And people use it far less as just acordar. They use far more acordarse de, far more. Okay. Okay. Recordar needs an object, a thing you remember. Okay. So actually, if somebody only says, oh, I remember, and they don't mention the thing, they're much less likely to say recuerdo. They'll say, oh, recuerdo el nombre. I remember the name because there's the object. Okay. But if they're just saying I remember, they're much more likely to say me acuerdo, me acuerdo. Okay. Acordarse often has an object, the thing or person you remember, but you can just say, me acuerdo, sí, me acuerdo. And that's saying, yep, I remember. Okay. Recordar formally should have an object, the person or thing that you remember. Okay. Bien. Vale. Okay. Here's the thing you were thinking about, Juanita. And this is why I got stuff in red and blue, azul y rojo y todo eso. Okay. Acordar. This is the one area where they're not totally interchangeable. Recordar can be used to say that something reminds you of something else. Okay. This reminds me of bad behavior with my pets. Okay. This reminds me that I've got to do grocery shopping. So something that jogs your memory, something that reminds you of something else, then it's recordar. So here we've got examples. And now it's you might hear me, but Juanita, what you thought you heard was not me recuerdo, it was probably me recuerda.
So
Es la diferencia.
it reminds me, or
It reminds me.
He could have been saying me acuerdo, and because he mumbles, because it was at the beginning with the glasses and the shirt.
And he's going
And-
fat.
and
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so what's he
And
saying?
he
Yeah.
was mumbling through that section. Yeah, but on purpose. On purpose. I might
Yeah.
add. So, okay. When you hear a pronoun with recordar, so here's the thing. When you hear a pronoun, okay, with acordarse, you must have that pronoun. Gotta. Okay? But when you do hear a pronoun with recordar, it's, oh, something reminds somebody of something else. So you get things like this. Me recuerdas a tu papá. You remind me. And look, the verb is the you remind. Recuerdas is you bring to mind. You bring to mind. In my little pea brain, you bring to mind your beloved father. Me recuerdas a tu papá. You remind me of your dad. Esta foto me recuerda a mi viaje a Barcelona. This photo reminds me, but see, I don't remember the photograph. It triggers my memory. So recuerda is conjugated for la foto. Sí, Catalina.
Would you say, remember me to your father? You know, like when you see your father, tell him I said hi, kind of remember me to say your, because that's
see,
almost what that says too.
It is like that. Yeah, I think I have heard people use it in that kind of sense. Dile a tu papá que tell your dad that I said, yeah.
Me
You know,
recuerdas a tu
turn of
papá.
phrases are different with different. So more likely they'll say something like, dile a tu papá que papá, tell your dad that, and that. They're probably more likely to phrase it that way. And this little last example, tengo que recordarles a mis hijos. You know, the blue is telling you about the person, right? I always have to remind my kids. I always have to stick it in their little brains. Siempre tengo que recordarles a mis hijos que tienen que haceres. I have to remind them that they have chores. Okay. So when you hear a me with recuerda, somebody's saying that a thing reminds me. Okay. A thing reminds me. That is the clue. It is not a reflexive, because for a verb to be, for a phrase to be reflexive, the me has to be paired up with a yo verb. And look here, me recuerdas. I've got me, but I sure don't have a yo verb. I've got a tu verb. You remind me. So these are not reflexive because they don't match up in form. ¿Sí? ¿Lógico? Bien, Susana, sí, dime.
This is a question that doesn't have anything to do with remind, but it's, why isn't it me recuerdas de tu papá? Of
Well,
your father,
some,
of
you
your
know,
dad, of your trip.
I sometimes do hear people saying de, but when we have a human being, especially as an object, that's a personal,
Okay,
and it's not really translatable,
okay.
but you know, yeah. Okay, a ver.
Thank you.
So, oh, okay, I did have this in here. Yeah, acordar without the reflexive is rarely used. It conveys it because acordar has a different meaning, non-reflexive. Okay, it conveys the idea of agreement, to be in agreement, not remembering. Okay, and so think of people are in accord with each other, and that means that they see eye to eye on the same thing. That's what that means. We have that word accord, and we use it with estar. Estoy de acuerdo contigo. I agree with you. I am of accord with you. Estoy de acuerdo contigo. But often we shorten that just to de acuerdo because it shortens our speech without having to talk about, say a lot of extra words. Okay, so that's where we're going with that. Do you understand the structure of why you got the prompts the way you did and how we use these two? ¿Hay alguna pregunta, any kind of question on those? See? No? We're going to do the faintest. Actually, I'm going to bring this up now. If you printed this out, this is your reminder that these are the little prompts you're going to need when we go into small groups to talk about what you remember. And the bottom is not going to be a remember. It's going to be a reminds you of. So you, and I'm going to put a little reminder here that this needs just recordar, right? You can't flip flop on that one. Actually, do I have two? And then we got little souvenirs. So hopefully we're going to save 9 and 10 for later, but we're going to look at 1 through 8 in some smaller groups. Okay. So let's look at our prompts first. You should either pull this up as a separate screen, or if you printed it, have your printed version handy. So here are the things I will send you off to talk about. We'll do a very, very quickie kind of review. And as a matter of fact, I'll probably put the cheat sheet link in case you want to bring that up in your screen. I'll put that up in the chat box. It's going to be a long looking link. So when we're done with the prompts, we'll send that through in the chat box. Okay, so habla de tus años en la escuela primaria. Talk about elementary school. Wow, that was way back. Me acuerdo de, yeah, I remember. Yeah. Habla de las celebraciones de familia cuando ustedes eran niños. Talk about you and your siblings, or you and your parents, or you and your cousins, quien quiera, whoever, okay? Lo que mis hermanos y yo recordamos es boom, 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 right? Habla de tu primer trabajo. Talk about your first job, what you remember about that. Habla de tu abuelo o tu abuela. recuerdo, okay, and boy, that's wide open. Habla de tu primer apartamento, tu primera casa. Talk about your first apartment or your first house. I think maybe we're going to leave this off in one session, the first 5, to make it more manageable, because if you got 3 people talking about these, the first 5 are going to take a while to get through, right? And just go through 1 through 5. Go for 1 through 5 for our first segment, okay? So those are little scenarios to think about. Yeah? And I'm gonna put the little link in the chat box. If you need a link to pull up a cheat sheet for past tense, there it is in the chat box. So you should copy that out of chat box. I am going to pull that up on the screen in a share in just about 30 seconds here. I need to adjust my font sizes so everybody can read that easily. A lot of you want to talk about what you remember. You say, oh, shoot, I've got to use some past tense and now I'm feeling kind of uncomfortable. Well, don't feel uncomfortable. Do the best you can with it. But we're going to take a look at, again, just a little review of what's going to happen with the other part that's not the recordar, the other part that's not the me acuerdo de, okay? If you need to use a true past tense, remember, if it's an event, something that happened once and then it was over, you're going to use real past tense, which is preterite, okay? Preterite means an event happened once, over, or a specific number of times. It can be counted, you know, happened twice, happened 3 times, happened on a certain date, okay? And AR verbs get these endings if they're regular. That's the trick with preterite, because there are a lot of irregulars, right? Okay, so hablar becomes hablé, hablaste, habló, hablamos, hablaron. Bailar would be bailé, bailaste, bailó, he danced, right? Bailamos, bailaron, right? If we have an ER and IR verb, we've got these other endings. So, you know, comer would become comí, comiste for tú, comió, comimos, comieron, right? See? Exacto. Escribir would become something like escribí, escribiste, escribió, escribimos, escribieron. Ver, to see. We take out the ER off of ver, and it becomes vi, viste, vio, vimos, vieron. I saw something, right? So preterite for events, things you can count. This is how many times it happened, or it happened on a certain date. That's what we use. But if you want to talk about, you remember something, and it's the idea of, oh, we used to do this because it happened a lot. And you don't know how often, just a lot. Like maybe every day on the playground when you were in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. You don't want preterite for that. If it happened a whole bunch of times and you can't count how many, but it used to happen. These are super, super easy because most of them are regular. So that is what we call the imperfecto. So if you have AR verbs, they're going to be aba kind of endings. Yay, yeah. So work, trabajar, will become trabajaba. Trabajabas. Trabajaba, same thing for LA a usted. Yo and LA a usted, 1st and 3rd person share forms. Yay. Trabajábamos, which is a mouthful, but it's regular. It's regular, right? ER and IR verbs are going to share endings. And a lot of these, most of them, vast majority of them are going to be regular kind of verbs. So comer becomes comía, comías, comía again, comíamos, comían, right? Vivir, if I used to live, and I don't tell like what year, but I used to live in that house over there. There's no how many times that happened. I used to live there. I want to use vivir. So it would be vivía, vivías, vivía, vivíamos, vivían. Yeah, if I used to do it a bunch of times. That's the reason for imperfecto. I used to do this. Okay? ¿Entienden?
I hope.
Okay. And if you get it wrong, no se preocupen. Do not worry. If you get it wrong, just do the best you can with that, tense, but what you remember. If you need to put it in present tense because it's easier for your brain to do that, don't worry about that. Convey the idea. That's more important. Okay. We're going to send you off into groups to work the first 5 ideas. Okay. And I want to keep it small as to about 3 people per group. So, a ver, ¿cuántos somos? Quizás 4 grupos, and I'll shift this around just a little bit. Oh, it's going to make me a sign. Darn, I did not want it to do that. Bien, okay, now it's going to make me do this. A ver. Yay. Okay. Sorry, this is taking me a little bit longer. Bien, and I've got to still assign Susana to 1 extra room. I got my extra Susana. Where did she go? Where did it put you? No sé. I don't know. Momentito.
Limbo.
I'm so sorry. I told this to populate everything as needed, and then it came back and threw me a curveball. Let me open them all up. Yes. Okay. I need to do this. Okay. Now we're set. Okay. You're going to hit your join button. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 para practicar nada más. Bien.
I couldn't remember. Put all my thoughts together.
That's okay.
But you don't have.
I'm just popping into each group just to see if you've got questions as you get started, and then I'm going to pop in and pop out.
Necesitamos escribir las answers,
Las respuestas. Okay.
respuestas.
¿Tienen ustedes papelitos o no? Do you
No,
need to see the actual questions?
no.
No. Okay.
La
Pero tienes que...
la pregunta es, necesitamos escribir las
La respuesta.
respuesta.
Antes de hablar, ¿no?
Ujú.
Antes de hablar. Sí.
Okay.
Por lo general. Pues sí, necesitas, pero para mí no no.
Okay.
No necesitan hacerlo para mí, no. Si te ayuda, if it helps you, claro, está bien.
Okay.
Pero no tienen que escribir todo. No. Y
Okay.
presentar muy formal. No. Ok, bien.
Gracias.
Otra pregunta. Any other question? Otherwise, I'm going to pop into each little room. ¿No? Bien. Ok. Bueno, practiquen, por favor. Make sure I just need to leave the room, not end the meeting. Good God, don't hit the wrong button, Marilyn. Okay.
Oh, hola.
I don't know where that came from.
¿Tienen alguna pregunta? You have any question as you're getting started here?
We're getting started. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. ¿Alguna pregunta? Somebody want to try something? We'll see how that goes.
Oh, I'll ask you something.
Yay.
Yeah, because the preterite and the imperfect, I didn't get it the first time around, and I'm very consistent.
That's okay. It's a tough thing for many, many, many people.
So if I was going to say, like number 3, okay, first job. Me acuerdo de mi primer trabajo. Yo era una camarera en Winchell's Donut Shop.
Bueno,
No.
sí.
No me gustan donuts. So,
Exacto. Okay.
so it would be era imperfect because
I used to be. Unless you're talking about the day you started and the day you ended, era is great.
Because it gets a little confusing when you're talking about, okay, imperfect is a description
Era
and
o fue.
preterite is an event.
Era and fue are the two that mess people up. But the truth of the matter is, people will use one or the other to put an idea in your head. So if, for example, somebody is really dwelling mentally on the fact that I don't do this waitress thing anymore, fue camarera, I'm done with this,
Done with
because
it.
fue is over with. But you know, if you're describing, oh, I used to be a waitress, and that's and that's the impression you want to leave with that person, then era camarera.
Hmm.
Perfecto.
So
Bien.
even though it's a description of something that happened, so it's also using preterite versus imperfect is one of those subtleties where they're giving you a meaning,
Yes.
you know, kind of
Yeah.
like when we say things in English that mean much more than the words.
So here's the difference. I could say, Lincoln fue presidente. Fue presidente durante la guerra civil. Lincoln was president during the Civil War. He was president during the Civil War. Ooh, I got a nice box beginning end. Lincoln fue presidente durante la guerra civil. Fue. Probably appropriate because you're really pegging it to a specific era with a beginning and an end. But I can also say Lincoln era una persona muy razonable. He was a very reasonable person. Era presidente, era buen presidente. He was a good president. I'm just describing.
Hmm.
There's the difference.
Hmm.
Am I pegging it to a time? Or am I describing the kind of person he was?
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
it. And even if you make a mistake with fue and era, people will know what you mean. You're not really in trouble
Hmm.
with that one. You're not really in trouble with that one.
So like if
You
you
do a
were
flip-flop.
describing a president, like say Harding, like who knows when he was president? Nobody. What did he do? No one knows. No one cares.
Well,
You
fue,
could- You
he's
could
done.
say he was a president.
You could,
in-
but I'd probably say fue because it's done. He's dead. Everybody knows he's gone. Fue presidente. He was president. You know, no era una persona inolvidable. He was not like an unforgettable person. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But here's something more you're going to talk about actually. Mi abuela era una mujer muy amable.
Hmm.
My grandmother was a really kind person. And even though she's dead and gone, our grandmas,
Mhm.
you're talking about how she behaved to everybody. So you're really going to use era because you're describing her.
The description. Hmm.
Iba a la casa de mi abuela todos los días. I used to go to grandma's house every day. comía galletas en la casa de mi abuela todos los días. Yeah, you're talking about things that were habits that you used to do a whole bunch of times at your old grandma's house.
Okay.
Ella me permitía jugar con su maquillaje. She used to let me practice with her, playing with her makeup. Me permitía, she used to permit me, me permitía jugar con el lápiz de labios, con todo eso, porque tenía 4 años, because I was just that old. Es la diferencia. ¿Ok? Bien.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so
Vale.
you just
Okay.
have to go through it. Yeah,
I'm going to check on some other rooms. Here we go.
okay.
Familia, nosotros recordamos es la Navidad, el desayuno con la familia, la comida con una abuela y la cena con la otra abuela.
Ah,
Y
las
muchas comida.
y mucha comida. 2 cenas con 2 abuelitas. Mucha comida.
Sí.
Me sentía muy gorda después de comer tanto. Entiendo.
Would that be comeraba or comeaba?
Comía
Mucho.
Comía un montón. Comía 2 cenas con 2 abuelitas en 2 casas diferentes.
Mhm.
Tanta comida. Así es. Yeah. Sí. Perfecto. Okay. ¿Alguna pregunta? Any question? I'm checking in with each room as people are doing this. Any other
Pecan
questions?
pie. Is pecan pie pastel de nuez?
Nueces. Sí, pastel de nueces. Me parece. I think that would be that way. Nueces would be nuts, and that would just be a really good, general thing. Pastel is a pie, a pastry.
Mhm.
A pastry. Bien?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to pop into a different room, a menos que tengan otra pregunta, unless you got some other little question hiding. No?
No.
Okay, me voy. I'm off to a different room.
I sold bread. I worked in a bakery and I sold bread. I think he's calling us back.
Oh,
Vendías pan?
Right.
sí,
You used to sell bread? Vendías pan?
sí.
Yeah.
Crusty French bread.
Wow, en una
Pan de
panadería.
French.
Qué interesante. De adolescente, as an adolescent?
Oh, when I was 16. Oh, I didn't know we could keep talking. I thought we were going back to it was.
No, not yet. I'm just checking to see what kind of
Okay, it
questions
was
people have.
tenía 16. Vendía pan, las pastelas y las galetas.
Muy bueno. Okay, Pat, you had a question. Maybe you can ask.
I did.
Marilyn.
Marilyn, can we use an infinitive after like Acuerdo Day instead of a noun? We can say like Acuerdo.
Oh, remember doing something.
Yeah. that's
Como por ejemplo, recuerdo andar con mi perrito. I remember
Okay.
walking with my dog.
I remembered
Good.
walking to school, and that's what I wanted to say. Caminar,
Recuerdo, sí,
caminar.
recuerdo
Okay, that's
que,
okay.
recuerdo cuando caminaba a la escuela.
Okay.
Sí, hay varios, sí.
Okay.
Because you're remembering an action, and that is a natural thing for people to talk about. Sí, exacto. Okay, so I can leave you for now, ¿sí?
Sí.
¿Puedo salir? Bien. Bien, okay. We'll give you a couple more minutes to tie some things
Okay.
together, and then we'll come back for like a big takeaway here. Excelente. Okay, and it puts you all on mute when we get back on in. Todos estamos aquí. Por fin, sí, creo que sí. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bien, ok. Vale, magnífico. Ok. Excelente. ¿Tienen alguna pregunta? Do you have any question finishing up? Did that go pretty smoothly? With, you know, it might be a little choppy at first, but
Was good.
We got through 4.
We got through 4,
you got through 4. That's good.
just 4.
Tres. Solamente tres.
Solamente 3, ok, está bien. Les voy a dar un poquito más tiempo la segunda vez. I'll give you a little more time the second time through. So if you got through 3 and you're starting on 4, pick up wherever you left off. It will send you back to the same rooms. I wanted to bring everybody back so we can kind of just touch base, see if you had any tough parts to work around, any questions before you start up the second half. Sí o no? No such thing as a stupid question.
In a
Really isn't.
general sense, if you're talking in an imperfect tense, would the entire sentence be an imperfect tense if you're talking about the same thing?
Probably. I mean, not the me acuerdo de part.
No,
But the
no,
rest
but
of
if
it,
you're
sure,
saying,
probably.
I
If-
remember, and you're talking about thing, okay.
Anytime
could
you're
be-
talking,
But if you're talking about something that happened when you did something else, like we went on a trip and this blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
That's-
well, yeah, right. So it
I mean-
always depends. But you know, if you're talking about something happened on a particular day, it's gonna generally go into preterite. One special day, right? You know, your 16th birthday, your 21st birthday. That's a special day. Something special happened, right? Okay. Pretérito, probably pretérito. But, you know, what you used to do at work at your first job every day, probably imperfecto because you did it a bunch of times, right?
Right.
If you talk about, because like from five on, you know, 5 and 6, wow, talking about your first apartment, your first car, those are going to be descriptions, right? Like the plumbing never worked in my first apartment. My tire used to go flat all the time on my first car. My first car was ugly. My first car was, you're describing. Oh, wow. So let's take a really, really, really quick look, because we sometimes, because of the nature of the question, might have an idea. What past tense do I have to use? So let's look at 4, 5, 6, 7, because some of you are picking up in different places. Habla de tu abuelo o tu abuela. Talk about your grandma and grandpa. You probably did a whole bunch of stuff with those people. So it probably was a lot of repetition. That's probably imperfecto, right? Número 5, habla de tu primer apartamento o tu primera casa. Talking about your first house, your first apartment, those are likely descriptions. Imperfecto, that's going to be kind of a slam dunk, yeah? And those, 7, habla de un viaje inolvidable, an unforgettable trip. Well, probably a one and done, yeah? I mean, you might have some imperfecto on it. There, it really depends. It really depends on the action you're talking about. If you did a lot of the same activity repeatedly on that trip, or if you're describing that trip, imperfecto. But if it was a special thing you did one time, then maybe pretérito. Entonces, número 7, depende. Number 7, it depends on what you're saying about that unforgettable trip. Número 8, habla de tu primer viaje a Arizona. Well, your first trip to Arizona was a one and done. Yeah, unless you grew up here. And I have one class, or I have 2 people who grew up here, and oh my gosh, it's hard because that's all they grew up with. But most people most of us are implants, so to speak. You know, we've been planted here long after life elsewhere. Okay. Ooh, 9. Souvenir. If you got a souvenir, great. Ooh, soy mala persona. I'm a bad person. I got to go quick grab my souvenir, which I don't have handy here because I was busy guarding against people attacking my screen. Okay, little furry people. If you have a little souvenir, or if you've got a picture of something, we're going to do 9. We're going to do 9 and 10 together, I think. 9 y 10. See, if you've got a souvenir to remind you of something, it's much better to show that with the group. So if you have a little souvenir, great. If you didn't bring one along, don't stress about it. And maybe you want to talk about a person who reminds you of somebody else. Or maybe you have nothing to say about that, which is also okay. Está bien? We good? Okay, I'm going to send you back out. If you want to skip the number 10, it's not a biggie. Pick up wherever you left off, because what matters is the practice. But I want to give you a good between 10 and 15 minutes to work this. And I've got to cheat and grab my little souvenir. Okay. All right, let's see here. I'm going to send you back off into the breakout rooms, and off you go. Ay, gatita, no llores. Basta con llorar. ¿Qué pasa? ¿Quieres comer? Chiquitas, ¿dónde estás? ¿Bien? No. Vale. Oh, Mickey. Ven, ven, ven aquí. ¿No? Mm. Excelente. Okay, bien. Did you get through most of them?
Sí.
Fantastico. Okay. We may run a little short on the things that remind you. So what I want to tell people is this, because I will do my example of that, and then I'm going to preview what I want you to prep for next week, because I do want everybody to bring when people bring a prop, it's so much fun. So either bring a prop, and even if you did this with your little group, do it for the whole group, because people have such a hoot with this kind of stuff. It cracks me up. But do save that número 9, number 9, something that reminds you, a souvenir, un recuerdo. La palabra en español para souvenir es un recuerdo. Yeah, so because it reminds you, and that's what helps you remember that recordar is for reminds, because that is the job of a souvenir, un recuerdo. It reminds you of something or somebody or someplace. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to bring it in again, even if you did it with your little group, to do it for the whole group, because people just do get a hoot out of this. Es mi recuerdo. Este recuerdo es una muñeca. Uy, es una muñeca muy bonita, muy preciosa. De verdad, esa muñeca es un recuerdo para mi hija. Mi hija ahora tiene 22 años, pero, ok, vale. Es un muñeco que me recuerda a un viaje a Alemania. Un año, ¿cuándo? En el año 2000. En el año 2000 fui a Alemania, a Múnich. Fui a Alemania con mi esposo y pasamos 2 semanas en Alemania y una semana muy al norte. Fuimos a una boda, pero esta muñeca es lo que tengo como recuerdo de Alemania, ¿sí? Es una muñeca alemana muy bonita, con el pelo rubio, con el vestido muy tradicional de Bavaria, sí, la falda verde, el cinturón con muchos colores aquí, una bufanda roja, sí, todo eso, muy tradicional, algo de Alemania, porque la familia de mi esposo vino de Alemania originalmente hace muchísimos años, en 1870, 1875, pero me recuerda a mi viaje a Alemania. ¿Entienden? ¿Verdad?
Sí.
Okay, vale. So do bring a little something to show, or if you have a picture of that thing, the share feature on Zoom will be enabled, so you can just pop the photo up. Sometimes that's easier for people to do. Okay, ¿entienden, no? Okay, será muy divertido. And I will bring yet another souvenir. Sí, claro. Voy a traer aquí otro recuerdo. Bien, so we'll lead in next week with that. And I'm going to leave you with 2 videos to watch. One will be a Holly video. And parts of this may be kind of hard, but parts will not be hard. It's one of those kinds of things. She's going to talk about the verb quedar. So we're kind of focusing on specific things that people use quite often in conversation. Quedar is used a lot in conversation, sometimes reflexively, sometimes not. And she's going to talk about those. And I'm going to base, again, some conversational prompts for you based on quedar. And I will take the easiest uses of quedar because she may get into the weeds with a couple things, but not everything. So we'll take some highlights of typical things that people will use in conversations. Oh, like talking about how much time they have left before they do some other job, like talking about where you stay, like talking about how something left you just stunned. Quedar is used for those ideas and many others, and she's going to illustrate a lot of examples of how we use quedar. So you will have that. And then I regret that we did not get to a walkthrough with
Yes,
our destinos. Our destinos, you're going to have this destino. It won't be this one. The empanadas was the old one, right? They kind of started to tie up something. Oh, some pieces start, yeah. Hacen las paces. They kind of have some this is a makeup episode between some of the characters who kind of blew up at each other in other episodes. I'm going to give you the next one over, which is called Tengo dudas. Tengo dudas means I have doubts. So yeah, you're going to see what some of the characters have doubts about. Do not feel when you listen to Destinos that you must understand every word. No es necesario. Lo importante, the important thing, lo importante es entender la situación, entender cómo se sienten las personas en el episodio. Lo básico, lo muy básico de lo que pasa en el episodio. Es todo. That's it. That's all you really need to do. So I do want you to listen to that. You're going to listen to the 12-minute with Holly. That's grammar, well, but it's expression oriented. Your questions will be based on the Holly stuff, okay? And the Destinos is just for listening and getting the gist of the story, the general lay of the land, who feels this way, who feels that way, why, what's going on. You may have questions about what some of the people are saying or how they feel or why they feel that way, and that is okay to bring. So that is what you will have for next week. ¿Sí? ¿Entienden?
Sí.
Okay? So some of the prompts will be probably not as long as what you had today. So we'll start with our little souvenir and then we'll move into quedar and a little bit of the destinos. ¿Sí? ¿Entienden?
Tengo una pregunta.
Sí, dime.
Because we went over some of the past tenses, I haven't taken a class of yours before. Do you have anything that you could give for just a refresher, maybe extra worksheet or something that?
Excelente. Do you want an extra video on past and like why we use one or the other? Or do you want like a straight works and forms kind of thing?
Both is good.
Both is good.
Both.
Okay.
Yes, if you
So
don't
I'll
mind.
give that. And if you say, I don't need this stinking stuff, then skip it. If you want it, check it out. It won't be a deep dive.
That's fine.
But it'll be just to get the feel. Because you're going to hear people in these videos using that too. So it'll help. It'll help.
Yes. It's been a
Right.
while. I have
That's
learned it
okay.
at one point.
And not everybody in this group feels super comfortable with, oh, I can just rattle off anything in past tense. So, and really the way you learn is by hearing lots of examples over and over and over again. And if you don't understand why they're doing something, why did they say that? And then we can kind of pick it apart a little bit. Todo está bien, todo bien, everything good. It's all good. Pero gracias, but thank you. I will send that along for you. Okay, and you can use it or not as you need. Magnífico. Eso es todo para hoy. That's all for today, I think. So I will stop the recording.